Hi everybody, this is Brendan with Common Motor, common-motor.com on the internets. And today we're going to be doing a reassembly video for a Honda CB350 or CL350 engine. A lot to it, so we're just going to jump on in and start putting this thing back together. Okay, so if you didn't get a chance to watch our disassembly video of the 350 engine, make sure you check it out right here. But this one, we're gonna be putting it all back together. Now this is the same exact engine we took apart in this assembly video. It happens to be a CL350 K3 engine, and it's basically the same engine that's right here on the poster. We're gonna film this video a little bit differently. We're just gonna be kind of putting it together in real time because, well, there's just a lot of parts to get through. We'll be calling out the new parts and pieces we're using for the rebuild as we get through it. So stay with us. This is the video I know a lot of you all have been waiting for. The very first thing we're going to start with on our 350 engine rebuild is going to be the lower crankcase. We have it all pretty much stripped down and cleaned out very thoroughly. Also, we've dressed and cleaned off this mating surface here, which will be have gasket sealer on it. A couple of details I'm going to point out on the 350 right here. We have it's a little rubber ball. It's a passage ball that blocks oil from this passage port. You need to make sure that little rubber ball is still there and in place and not missing. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of oil pump problems, probably a damaged engine. But as you can see, the engine case is spotless. The very first thing I'm going to install in this is going to be a couple of some oil seals because it's easy to move the case around now. And then we're going to put the kickstart shaft in. All right, so here's our crankcase. I'm going to go ahead and install the oil seal for the shift shaft right now because see everything's laying nice and flat. It'll make it easy to do. I'm going to use a little bit of Honda Bond here, just a real light bit on the perimeter of the seal here. Some people like to put them in dry. I like to put them in with a little bit of sealer. And the Honda Bond's got some acetone in it, so it makes it kind of slide in easy. We just put a little bit on the circumference of the seal here. And I bet you it just drops right in. I can just press it with my fingers pretty much. The socket makes a good drive tool, and I'm just going to tap it in gently here. Side. There we go. There we go. All right. Not crazy on it. Seal is installed. Put the Honda Bond away. All right, so before we put the Kickstarter shaft in, let's talk about the sequence of the parts. The order of these things are very important. Obviously, the shaft is going to go in first, and we have this large washer, which will be on the outside of the shaft here between the case. We're not going to use that right now, so we can put it aside. Once the shaft is in the case, it's going to be the large starter gear. It's going to be this washer that has the two flats on the inside of it, a large spring, other engagement teeth cog thing, whatever it is, middle-sized washer, small spring, alignment arm, small washer, snap ring, in that order on the reassembly. I'll make sure this little tang is above that part of the casting there on the install here, like that. All right. In fact, we'll end up probably winding that spring another wind around. See how that's loose? We'll wind it around again. All right, shafts in. We went ahead and put our kickstart arm on here because it makes it a little bit easier to kind of move things around, and that's gonna be important here as we're assembling the rest of the mechanism. Our first thing's our large gear. We'll put a little oil on it. Just a drop to keep things lubricated. We can wiggle that in place there. Next, our washer with our 2 flats on it. Like that. Large spring on. And this is when it starts to get kind of fiddly. We have to line things up just right. On our little mother sprag here, we have this angled piece that's going to face towards the front of the motor, and I went ahead and put a mark on the top of it that's kind of our, it's going to face up on that mark right there. And it only kind of fits on the shaft one way. Where's the magic spot? Right there. Fits on like that, but we have to give it a little bit of slack because we have to line up that bracket there. It's got a little bit of a, see that little notch in it? Well, that ends up lining up with this piece, and the long finger ends up going in this area right here. There's there's a groove right there that fits in. It all has to kind of fiddle and fit together the same way. And we have to add a washer, the medium-sized washer here, to it. Put that on there. Smaller spring. Now the little retainer finger piece thing, I have it aligned in the casting, and this is where it gets fiddly because I have to kind of bring the pawl back and get everything to line up just perfect. There you go, that's in there like that. And when I have it in the right spot, I should be able to compress it and then turn the kickstart lever, and it holds it all in place. So that little pawl is holding this arm in, and now I don't have to worry about it popping loose. Should have enough space here for small washer on the end of the shaft. I'm going to tilt the engine up a little bit here. You guys can see a bit better, like that. Small washer on the shaft, and then the small snap ring. It'll be interesting to do with one hand, everybody. What I should do is tie that. That was SMRT, but here, just do this. Get me would you just put that on the pliers? Other way. Like that, yeah. All right, we're gonna see if I can do this in one hand. It's easier with a buddy to do it. I'm gonna get that snap ring right there on the end of that shaft. Like that. Make sure it's on there all the way. There it is, clicked on in the groove. That side's not in the groove. And I'll make sure that snap ring is all the way in where it needs to be. Yeah, it looks like it, so I think we're there. No, not quite, but I can still push it in place with the screwdriver here real lightly. Don't want to launch it across the shop here. There it is. There it is, all the way in the groove. I can see it all the way around now. Perfect. All right, there's our Kickstarter. And so as this thing is turning, you can see how the pawls disengage here on the gear, and then they would re-engage when you hit the Kickstarter. We don't have that spring loaded yet. We'll do that here, and we'll do that later. But right now, that's basically installed. We're gonna leave it there. We'll pull the arm off and move on to the next piece. All right, so we've moved on to the upper side of the crankcase here. And the very first thing I'm gonna install is another seal here. It's the shift drum seal, which actually goes to the neutral switch. It's right there on the case. We'll flip it over, put the seal in just like we did for the shift shaft seal, and then we'll assemble the shift drum. There's our spot. Put that on my pinky there. Get some more old Honda bond here. Put some of that on there. And just like that. Just to press in. Look at that. I'm just gonna press right in with my fingers. Easy peasy, I don't even have to tap it in place. Cool. while I'm here, I'm gonna put a little drop of oil on the inside of that seal lip, so it stays lubricated. Put the shift drum together. All right, so turn the case over here so you guys can kind of see the side of it. And here is our shift drum assembly. Actually, it's gonna come in from that direction there. Yeah, so just so you know, we've cleaned and measured and inspected all the parts that came out of this engine and going back together. So we're just not randomly throwing things apart. They have been cleaned and inspected. And what's particularly important here on the shift drum is our sequence of our shift forks. Now we want to make sure we kept them in the right order, coming off the engine and going back on. If you need to, let's take a Sharpie and let's mark them. That way we know. We can do like this. So we know where each one would have lived that way. Also have our pins and clips ready. And I'm just gonna take these off one at a time. One, we'll do that there. 1, 2, 3, and this is our shift drum here. So nice and clean, ready to go back in the motor. And put a little bit of oil, a little bit of oil on it, just motor oil. A little bit on there too. Okay, so I'm gonna just start feeding it through the case here. Take my first shift fork. Put it on. Second shift fork. You're gonna keep it up. Put it on. Third shift fork. Put it on. We're just gonna work the whole mechanism all the way through. There it is, right there. That's all the way in, and then our small end is poking out of the case right there. That's where we just put our seal. Happy about that. So we're going to install the pins, but I'm going to point out kind of the orientation of it. If you look at this shift fork, we see we have this bulge here. That's for this pin. It's going to go in right there. The middle one has these little, it's got these little wings on it, and the pin is going to be on the right side. And of course, the last one, the pin is also on the right side as far as alignment. We're going to start with this one first, and if we look at our drum here, you see we got this groove. Just a little groove here. That's where the pin runs. So when we drop the pin in, we want to make sure that we have the hole lined up over the groove so the pin goes in no problems. I'm going to use a magnet for this to make life easier. Got a pin, got a little bit of grease, and I'm going to use the grease to help hold the pin in place. It's kind of a sticky thing. So I can get the pin in here. That. We get to push down all the way. Need something smaller to push with. Find the spot. There it is. So that drop down. It's in the groove there, and that pin is really recessed. All right, let me put the retaining clip on it now. All right, so coming in with our clip, and you see how the clip has a straight line on it, and like the curve clip. The straight line's gonna be facing up because it's gonna cross right in front of the pin, and be careful not to shoot this across the shop. I'm doing it, come on. There it is. Like that. And you can see how the top of the pin, the really top of the pin is holding, actually the clip holds the pin in place. Let me just tilt this up a little bit like that. Okay, number 2, there's my groove there. There's my hole for my pin. Same thing, got the pin ready, lined up, got a little grease on it, help hold it in place. Hopefully we can just work it in there and press it in place. And it's in the sweet spot, there it is. Got to drop down all the way. like that. All right, we'll rotate, we'll put that's where our clip's gonna go. We'll get the clip in place here in just a second. Again, our flat side of the clip is gonna go across the top of the pin, so it's gonna come in like this. Come on. Oh, so fiddly. Come on. Use some bigger pliers on this one. I'm just at a weird angle to do it, you know. Here we go, ready? There it is. Like that. A little bit of grease here, my groove is somewhere right there. Drop that pin in. Did it before. Find a spot where it drops in. There it is. All right, it's in place, and my clip. Sure, that one looks a lot better. Like that. And that's it. 3 clips are installed. Shift drums are installed, or shift forks are installed in the shift drum. Next thing we're going to install is going to be our crankshaft. We've gone through and cleaned it, and we measured everything. We measured the play on the bearings, on the outers and the inners, as well as the play on the rod and the diameter of the small end. So this crank was in great shape, well within spec, so it's going back into service. Before I put it in, I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of assembly lube on these inner bearings here. This is engine assembly lube. It's like red gooey honey. And it's just to help keep things lubricated before the engine starts running. So we can get some of that down in there. Ooh, it's thick today. There. On that side face right there. It's coming with a little bit of motor oil. Just gonna get those bearings lubricated right there. And actually, you can put some oil in those. Oil in those. Just want to make sure everything's got a little bit of oil in it before it goes back together. A little bit of lubrication on that side. So we can squeeze some of that assembly lube to there. And this, I haven't used this brand before, it's pretty thick, but so we can just kind of squeeze some in there. On the face there, spin it around the face, see if we can get some oil. So at bare minimum, you can use oil in almost everything here. Get some oil in there. Is nice and oiled up. I'm not worried about the outer bearings because we can access those once the engine's assembled. And we're going to put a couple of these alignment pins in. We got 2 on the center cranks. So there's a couple holes here, and we're going to go with this. So we have these larger holes. That's where the pins fit. There's a little bit of grease to hold them in place so they don't fall out. That's right. Moving things around. So that kind of fits in there. I think grease will hold it in place. We'll do another one. All right, this big bearing also has an alignment hole, but we're going to take our pin and we're going to actually put it in the crankcase right there. That's where that one belongs. I'm just going to put a little dab of grease on it so it doesn't want to fall out of the case as we're fumbling with all these parts coming together. Just go like that. So it goes in pretty deep. So when I drop the crank in, I want the pin to line up there. We have a notch here and a notch here for the pin. Now on some other earlier 350s, the bearing on this side had notch pin. This later version, this K3, has a ball bearing on it versus one of these kind of roller bearings, so it doesn't have one, but the case is still notched for it. And then we're gonna come on with our bearing cap here, and this does have a direction to it, an orientation to it. Let's get the crankshaft just kind of dropped in place first, and then go from there. Rods through the middle, like that. Turn the big bearing until we find the magic spot. And then we turn the engine here. You can actually see on the bearing that there's two lines. Do you see these two lines that are etched in the bearing to signify that's what the split line is on the crankcases, and see how the bearing's sitting there nice and flush, and the spline side is on the same side where the transmission mechanism is. Okay, back up top here, I want to just orient this bearing so I can get I want that pin to fit right perfectly into that, right there, just like that. So it fits in there nice and clean. That looks good. Just move this one around. Same thing on the bottom side here. So that pin fits in there nice and flush, nice and clean. Looks good. Yep. That's what happens when it's all well lubricated. It wants to turn. That all cleaned off, wiped off. Looks good. I do want to point out a couple things real quick before we button this up with the bearing retainer here. Now would be the time to put in the cam chain for most people. If it was an original Honda, it would have been a closed loop chain, so you'd have to thread it over the crankshaft and then put it through the engine here. I happen to have an open loop chain here. Again, if you're changing the cam chain out, which I do recommend, now would be a great time to install it. So it's there. We're not going to install it here right now. We're going to put it on without the cam chain, because we're going to show you how to install the cam chain from the top end of the motor in this fashion, like you were doing like a top end rebuild. So I'm just gonna take that out of there. Our open loop cam chain, and we'll come back to that when we start putting the top end together. All right, so on the 350 we have a bearing retainer cap right here, and this is our cap. It's got 4 bolts, they're all the same. I'll take them out for now. Side. But this cap does have an orientation to it. If I show you on this end, see how we have kind of a channel cut in it right here and a little bit of a groove. If I flip it over, see how it's solid back? That open grooved in faces forward because we have to have clearance for the case to come down and line up with that other dowel pin there. So just goes on like that. My bolts, all 4 are the same. Put a little bit of motor oil in the threads and a little bit of motor oil underneath the head. And we're going to get these installed and torqued in place. And bring the bolts down until I feel them just seat, touch, right there, right there, right there, and right there. Okay, now we're going to torque them. This involves a torque wrench, and the actual torque setting is something like 13 to 15 foot-pounds. We're going to use the inch-pound torque wrench, and we've done the conversion, and we're at 170 inch-pounds. The reason I'm using the inch-pound torque wrench is because a lot of these values are pretty low as far as a foot-pound torque wrench, and it's just not going to be as accurate. So the inch-pound is the way to go. And we have a sequence to this. Our sequence is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 in that order. So, all right. Just going to go nice and smooth till we feel the click. Just like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come back and check again. Nothing. 1, All right, that's it. Turn the motor up on the side. We're gonna go ahead and install the indexing part of the shift drum now before we drop all the transmission gears in. It'll keep everything lined up. We have all those bits and pieces in here, and we'll make sense of it here in just a bit. Our first important piece is this guy right here, which is I call it the indexing wheel, where it lines up into these little notches on the end of the shift drum. I'm just gonna go ahead and put a little bit of, put some of the raspberry jam in here. Just gonna get that roller there. All nice and lubricated. All right, so even though we have the shift forks in, I can actually push on the bottom of the shift drum and kind of raise it a little bit. See that? Raise it up, and then I can just slide that right in place there. See how the wheel is facing down? And now I need to get the spring in place. We have this spring here, and it has a little tiny pigtail on the end there. There's a hole in the case that pigtail fits into. But first, I'm gonna raise this back up. Get the spring on here, like that. Just a screwdriver, and I'm going to compress the spring and get that little pigtail in the hole. Case there. Holding the spring so I don't launch it across the shop. There we go. Just like that. Okay. We have a bolt or washer set up here. Got this special stepped washer here. It goes underneath the, I'm gonna push that drum a little bit there again, come on. There you go. That'll go on there, like that. Line up the hole. Let's put a little bit of assembly lube on it right there. And then we just have this M6 bolt. Goes in there, tighten the whole thing down. It just keeps going. All right, snug it up. All right, let's see if it's actually, moving smooth. Maybe put a little bit of oil on that too to help. Oil's gonna help. Oil's all good there. And we'll put some strawberry jam on that here. We got a giant screwdriver, and I'm gonna just show how that index mechanism works all the way to the top gear here. Let's put some bit lube on all those pieces there. It'll just spread all around. Of that little kind of star pattern on the end of the shift drum here, we have one that has a flat on the end, and that flat is what would indicate the neutral position of the bike. And so as I just kind of rotate this here, neutral would be about there, and you can see how it's a bit raised, and then that would be first, neutral, second, third, fourth, fifth. All right, so we're going to go ahead and install the neutral detent spring assembly, and that's going to be on the top side of the case. So let me flip the case up, and we'll get to that. All right, so this little goofy thing up here is where the neutral detent lives. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little Just a little bit of assembly lube inside there. Actually, didn't quite get it where I want it. So I can get it somewhere on the screwdriver. There's a little spot there on the shift drum. That's for a ball bearing. And so that's the first thing I'm going to do is drop in this ball bearing. Boop. There it goes. That little spot in the drum there. That's why I put some of the assembly lube on it. All right, so we have this kind of funky hollow nut thing for the top retainer there, and then we have this lock washer. It has a flat tab. It'll end up going like right there. But the washer goes on first, like that, and then there's another O-ring that goes on in a groove there to help seal everything nice and clean. So we got a new O-ring for that. So come on, get on there. All right, there it is. Nice and tidy, stays in place. And then we also have there's a spring here. This is the detent spring that pushes on the ball. So I'm just gonna set it in there on top of the ball so it doesn't misalign, and we'll start to putting this together. Get started first. Right there. That was the O-ring popping into place. Now it's nice and flush. So it doesn't have to be crazy tight, and then we'll bend up that tab there. Good. All right, that's all it's got to be. All right, so I got the engine flipped over on the other side now. We're going to install the neutral switch, and on the 350, it's a pretty primitive little thing. It just kind of sits there like that. We have a small screw that holds it in place, and I'm going to reuse it because, quite frankly, it's a very minimal part. Just like that. And then here is this little cam that actuates the switch. And if you can see in the middle, it's got a piece of brass in it. And that's what makes contact with the switch to actually go in the neutral. The rest of it's kind of plastic. On the back of it here, I have a little tab. See a little index piece right there. And that lines up with that. There's a hole or notch there in the end of the shaft. So get that all lined up. Actually, let me get the screw in there first and then get it lined up. Another long screw here. Making sure that little tab lines up. I'm just getting low here. Yeah, it's in the groove there. That's it. Just like that. Let's get it tightened up. All right, that's it. All right, we're ready to start prepping to put the transmission gears in, but the first thing I'm gonna do while I have access to all these pieces is I'm gonna put a little bit more assembly lube on here because I didn't really do that when we put it together. Also because I wanted to keep the mess down. Now that it's all together, we can, start to move these things around. Yeah, get some of that on there, a little bit of oil as well. Thin that out. Keep those pieces ready for coming together. So spread some of that around. Get all the passages and stuff on here. Shift forks here. I'm gonna just put some assembly lube here on the inside the shift works there. Okay, that'll be ready for the transmission pieces for me. All right, we're gonna get ready to put the transmission gears in, but before we do that, we're going to install some of our alignment pieces here on the transmission. We have 2 dowel pins, one goes here, one goes here. And then we have these 2 half-round pieces that go on here. They look like half of a piston ring, like that. And so we're gonna just put them in place real quick. Just putting a little bit of grease on them to help kind of stick them in place so they don't move around like that. That'll work. 1. More in there. Not too much. 2. Like that. Just enough to keep them from wiggling out or moving or falling out when we're messing with the stuff. Same thing goes with the dowel pins here. Here they are. 1, just a little dab of grease on it, just kind of press it in there. Just a little dab of grease there. A magnet can be helpful when doing this too, so you don't drop the piece. There you go, that's in. The other side, give that a quick wipe. Everything looks good. Perfect. All right, our next step is going to be to install the transmission. We're going to install the output shaft first, which is going to be going to the 2 outer forks, and then the input shaft will go to the outer right there. I'm going to open up this bearing here. The bearing is unique for this side, so we have the pin, we have that slot, pin, slot. So that's the bearing for this side. The opposite side doesn't have the slot in it. Use a little bit of assembly lube here. And I'm just going to put some of this in here, like that. On the bearing and work it around. On our sliders here, I'm just going to put a little bit of motor oil on these pieces here. Make sure all these shafts are lubed with oil. They don't need a ton, but they definitely need some. Let's go with this one here like that. There. A little bit of oil in the bearing. Again, we can always add a little more oil to this stuff later if we need to. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. Change my transmission position here. Let's go with that. That's like second gear right there. All right, so we're gonna try to get this to all line up. All right, there we go. Our shift forks are in our slots here. And let's see, we get those bearings seated. That one's seated. Let me see about this one here. This is the tougher one to seat sometimes because it doesn't want to line up. You have to rotate it. Find the happy spot. All right, let's go further down. It all just kind of clicks together. There it is, right there. So you know it's correct because when I turn the engine here, tilt that. See how that's nice and perfectly flush. There's no space there between the bearing and the case. Same thing on the other side here. We turn it between the bearing and the case. There's no gap, and also you can usually see the half round. It's gonna be tough to see in the camera, but I can see the little half round retainer in the case, and I can see it's lined up with the groove in the bearing, so that should be good. Right there. Same exercise. Upper shaft here. Same deal, put a little bit of raspberry in here. Got all the bearing there. that. A little bit of oil on this. Oil there. But we did put a little bit of raspberry on it on the inside off camera there so you guys can see that. But you guys get the idea. All right, same thing, except we only have to line up the one slider right there. Now, that bearing's in on that side. I can see that. Let's see about our small bearing is not in place. Come on. It's tough to line it up when you're wearing gloves. Where's the hole? There it is, right there. Dropped in nice and clean. And also I can't rotate it. So again, we're there nice and flush against the case there. And I can see the half rounds on that one. So that's the, that's how you put the transmission together. A lot of people are super intimidated by doing that, and it really just drops together and line up the pins, and that's all you gotta do. So what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna just make sure that the gears are shifting the way they should before we button this whole thing up, because if we have a problem or adjustment to make, now's the time to do it before we put the cases together. So we're gonna be mainly turning the shift drum here with a JS screwdriver on that screw there, and Caleb's gonna be helping with this, and I'll be turning the transmission shafts, and we're gonna just make sure that it does kind of clunk through all the gears. Now, something to keep in mind is, when you're shifting gears, the engine's running, so all these shafts are always turning, which is what allows them to slide into gear. If you just did it statically, you didn't turn the things, it doesn't always want to go in the gear, because that's not how the transmission is designed. So we're gonna kind of clunk through them as if the engine was running, to make sure it does what it needs to do. Right now it's in first, and we'll just go ahead and click through 5, and we'll work our way all the way back. So I'll start turning real quick, and that's the way this one goes. So we're at first, go ahead and go to neutral. Our neutral, I can see we're neutral. I can turn the shafts either way. All right, so we can go second. There's second right there. All right, third. There's third. Fourth. There's fourth, and fifth. Come on, there it is. Nice. Fifth right there. Cool. All right, let's go back down to fourth. Come on. Fourth? Third. That's third? All right. Second? Come on. Second? There's second. All right. Neutral? There's neutral. See that? And back to first. There's first. All right, let's go ahead and put it back in neutral, just to have it there. All right, so that's neutral. You can see how that's neutral. Perfect. All right, it seems to be doing what it needs to do. Happy with that. So let's go ahead and get it prepped to put on the lower case. All right, before I put the Honda bond on any of these surfaces here, I'm gonna kind of clean up with a little bit of acetone, make sure there's no grease or dirt on them right there, because we want these surfaces to be clean, free of dirt and grease here. If you guys haven't figured it out yet, acetone's kind of my preferred engine or degreasing solvent. Clean stuff well. I like using acetone. All right, that one's good. Move it here to the side. They're nice. I like it. Our cases are cleaned. We're almost ready to put the Honda bond on, but the first thing we're gonna do for that, we're gonna install our output shaft seal and our push rod seal right here, because it's accessible for us to get to. My push rod seal. Make sure that little opening there is also wiped clean. Honda bond here. And if you guys, people ask about Honda bond or 3 bond or whatever this stuff is. So it's a latex acetone based sealer. It's not RTV silicone. A lot of people think it's because it's the gray stuff you get at the auto parts store. It's RTV silicone. It's a different product. It's meant specifically for aluminum case components coming together. You can use it in other spots too, but it's just a different kind of sealer. Goes on thin and stays thin. Kind of stays pliable. It's almost like a really gooey version of like latex paint in a way. Like that. So a little bit of circumference of that. I'm just gonna put that right in place right there. Now, originally the seals went in dry on the bikes. I have to put them in a little bit of sealer just in case. Doesn't hurt. I'm lubricating the inside of that seal lip with some oil, so it rides on that shaft there. And then put some more Honda Bond on this. All right, just lift that gear out of there just ever so slightly. Pop that on. All right, we're in place. Just like that. Cool. That'll work. Okay, now let's go ahead and put the Honda Bond on the case here. And when we're starting to work with this stuff, we have to work kind of fast. And so when you're ready to do it, you have to commit to do it and keep going. All right, I'm gonna use the Q-tip to kind of start with because I have to get into some of these smaller spaces here first, like that. And the key is just to go with kind of an even coat. You don't want to go nuts with it because you're going to have it on the other side of the case as well. We just want to get some in place here. I'm trying to think about putting like the most even coat of butter on your toast as you can. That's kind of the way I think about it. In these smaller areas, using something like a Q-tip makes it a lot easier to get to some of these small contours. Like that right there. Like that. In fact, that's a little thick right there. That's all right though. Put off the flag right there. So we want to go on thin because when this gets put together, it squishes like a sandwich, and if you ever put too much jelly on the sandwich, it'll squeeze out of one side, it squeezes out the other side as well. All right, let me just come up here with this one. Just do my finger a little faster, just like that. So it's definitely, this is the harder side to do. That one's much easier. Try to get the stuff on. Okay, so don't forget about them. I gotta put some dowel pins in. The dowel pin that goes here, right there. Most people call them knock pins, whatever. There's alignment dowels. One up here. That's okay. Should be good. Ready to go. Let's put the Honda Bond on the lower case here. Same drill. It's a lot faster on this one. Try to skip any excess that is kind of oozes over the edge. We want it just on that surface there. That's good, nice and even like that. You can almost like feel it with your finger, like when it goes even. Nice even coat. All right, here we go. Okay, so just line up those dowel pins, and they should just kind of, it's basically set together. Sometimes I just gotta gently tap it, but it should be, that's it, it's together. Like I didn't really fight it. Cool. I'm just gonna take a single bolt right here, put one in the middle on each side just to kind of hold it. A little bit of oil in the threads, come on. Oil in the threads there. A little bit of oil under the head of the bolt. Get that in place real quick. Just so we can get a little something on the case. You can see it squish out the top edge there. A little bead that squeezed out. Do that. Let's do this middle one in the back. We're gonna do it right there on the bottom side there. Put a couple of them in, a little bit of oil in the threads. A little bit of just hand snug right there. Okay, so just hold the cases together. And what we got, I was talking about the squeeze, right? You can start to see it kind of oozing out of the edge there. We could even, you know, kind of wipe it up a little bit if you want. But that's what we're trying to go for. If you get too much of it, you know, whatever squeezes out on this side, you can also squeeze out on the other side as well. So you got to keep that in mind. That's where it's important just to be a light coat of this stuff. You can see it all the way around that seam there, a little bit there, coming across. It's good. Put the case over. Yeah, all right, just kind of oozing out. Not too much, but just enough. A little more will ooze out when we put some more of the bolts in. Let's see what I got up here. Let's go ahead and put these top bolts in. You got 2 top bolts here. Go in. I'm coming in with all that stuff with a little bit of just motor oil on the threads, and then a little bit of oil just beneath the head of the bolts, between the head and the washer, because these do get the torque wrench. Oil in there, that. And right now I just want to get all the bolts in place and just have them kind of seat, and then we'll grab the torque wrench and we'll torque everything down. Back over. So you guys can see it. Same thing, we're gonna just keep going with the bolts. We've got these 4 big ones here that kind of hold the main bearings in. Same drill, a little bit of oil in the threads. And just go ahead and oil them all right now and just drop them in place, and then we'll, I think you guys get the idea how this all works. So although it's not published in the Honda manual, there is actual torque values in all these bolts here. We get the 4 larger bolts. Their torque value is kind of like 15 to 16 foot-pounds. So that's about 180 inch-pounds. And the smaller M6 bolts, there's gonna be 6 to 7 foot-pounds, or about 90 inch-pounds. We got our inch-pound torque wrench here. I'm gonna set it to 90. We're gonna do them all at 90 first, then we'll come back and do the last 4 in a second pass here. All right, 90 inch-pounds here. And the way I'm gonna approach this is, you know, since there isn't a set sequence, I'm always kind of start in the middle and work my way to the outer side. So I'll start with these 2 larger ones here. I'll move to these two, and then I'll move back, and then we'll kind of go back and forth and crisscross as much as we can in a torque pattern, because you want to bring it down as evenly as possible. And also note there's two different sizes here. It's going to be, I'm using a different size socket for the largers, and it's a 12 for the larger. Is it 12 or 14 here? I think it's 12. It's 12, yeah, and then 10s on the smallers. But we'll go ahead and start with the big 4, and I'm going to go with this one first here. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Get that 1 right there. We'll go ahead and do that one. Five, 6. I'm gonna go up here now. 7, 8, middle, 9. Coming back, we're gonna go with this one down here. Got one over here. Build the case here. Get two on the top. Top. 1. 2. All right. Not going to worry about the big ones. Yeah, I'm going to come back around and hit the small ones again, just to make sure, because sometimes they settle after you do a pass. That's good. Here, oh, this one here, I think maybe. Middle. That's fine. I'm not surprised they're not moving. But it is important to use a torque wrench and to kind of spread the. All right, and I'll flip the top over again. Just do that. Just a last quick check on them. They're fine. That one's fine. All right. We're good on those. Let's do the bottom 4. The big ones up to 180. All right, we're gonna do the bottom 4 now. Let me just start over here. And all right, 1. Since we're just doing these 4, I'm gonna go this one. I'll crisscross to this one now. 2, 3, 4. Do the pass. 1, 2, 3. All right, that's it. Lower cases, up and lower cases are assembled.